birds and the bees. And she said, it's the conversation about what it is to be a man of color, a young man of color, walking the streets of our city and ensuring that if you are faced with a cop that stops you, how do you behave? And the fact that a mother has to have that conversation with a child, or a father has to have that conversation with a child, really should tell us something of where we are and where we should move from. It is not a good place to be. And the lives of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, as well as 3 transsexual women that have been killed in Puerto Rico in the past month and a half, have to really put us to work in ensuring that we understand what our own reality is. I don't live in Minnesota, so I cannot feel exactly what the people from Minnesota feel. But I know exactly what 8 minutes and 29 seconds look like, and how that took the life of a man that was accused of allegedly passing on a fake $20 bill. That is not what we want. That is not what we need. That is not who we want to be. And you can see that it has ignited and it has had repercussions all over the world. So in a world that has to change, we need strong voices, voices like Melissa, voices like everyone that's over here. Because sometimes we think that the only people that can exercise their voice are people that are in public office. But this little thing, you know, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and whatever else is out there really gives us all a voice and allows us all to amplify that voice. And it's very important to do that. Just 30 seconds about Puerto Rico. Things are not going so well here. Different than in Maria, the federal government has sent the money faster than they did last time, but our local government has been incapable of ensuring that the money gets into people's hands. It took weeks, about 7 weeks after the $2.2 billion were transferred to the Department of Treasury in Puerto Rico for the current government to start handing it out. There are more than still 30,000 applications for unemployment. At one point, there was 130,000 applications that had not been processed by the Department of el Departamento del Trabajo. ¿Cómo se dice?
Labor, Department of Labor.
Department of Labor in Puerto Rico. And just yesterday, we got this news that they were hiring a place for people to literally hand their applications by hand in paper because the system that they put together didn't work. And they were paying close to $10,000 a day. A day. That's $300,000 a month. And we at the municipality of San Juan offered them 3 places for free. They haven't even replied. Now, mind you, $10,000 a month in Puerto Rico, it's the monthly salary of 3 teachers. And they're spending it on 1 day, just 1 day only. So this local government has also been unable to procure enough testing for everybody. The municipalities have had to take care of that. Still at this point, there is no, at the local level, there is no standardized tracking. So there's no tracking. Just today, the Department of Health in Puerto Rico said, oh, by the way, we had these numbers of tests that had been done 2 months ago and we had not counted them. So there has been a complete inability of the government to handle this crisis as the earthquakes. You know, we've had a couple of rough 4 years, 2 hurricanes of Category 4, gusts of Category 5, the Fiscal Control Board that continues to impose austerity measures in Puerto Rico. We had 3 governors in a week, one that the Puerto Rican people ousted, one that wanted to perpetrate an unlawful staging of becoming the governor, and this one that was not elected by the people of Puerto Rico, but was in the line of secession. So we've had that, and now the earthquakes, 2 of them in January, and then this. But, you know, we have to push on. We have to make sure that people register to vote. We have to make sure that people understand that their vote is their best protesting tool. You can boo, but you have to vote. You can tweet, but you have to vote. You can protest, but you have to vote. So as Obama said, don't boo, vote. And, you know, in the case of Melissa, I've known her for a long time. She could be doing many other things. And she's decided that she wants to devote her life to making sure that all of our lives are better. And we need a strong voice, a strong Latino voice, a strong female voice, that in the face of hate, division, and simply lack of common sense, we need someone like Melissa to fight for all of us. I like your hat, Roberto.
So, but no, I mean, you know, alcaldesa, gracias. I mean, thank you so much for being here and for your generous words. I, you know, feel that we are at this moment in, you know, una encrucijada and a crossroads, right? We, in my 51 years on Earth, I have not seen a moment like we have seen right now, where I felt that sense of urgency. What motivated me to run for Congress was being in Puerto Rico last summer, right? And seeing the level of mobilization from the people when government, right? The corruption, the lack of seriousness and attention to a dire situation. People said enough was enough, right? The exposure of the chats, which was discussed, showed and showcased for all eyes to see what many knew, right? That there was deep corruption. But to see out of 3.2 million Boricuas on the island, literally a million out in the streets, and led to, right, the resignation of a governor, to me was like, you know what, this is the level of engagement that we need to be nurturing all across this country as a way of demanding change. And so in light of an administration by this occupant in the White House, which is sociopathic, and you mentioned lack of empathy, right? A sociopath is someone who is narcissistic, lacks empathy, no care in the world, is led to a lot of division in this country, is inciting violence in ways that we haven't seen. We've seen an increase in hate crimes. You know, there was a sense of urgency that something desperately needed to happen. And so now we find ourselves in that there's great inequity and injustice in this country that is systemic, and great inequity and injustice that we cannot tolerate anymore. It's insustainable, right? We cannot live through this, and we can't accept this as normal. And so for me, you know, in light of representing and running to represent a portion of this congressional district as a council member, but now running to represent this congressional district, you know, it highlights what we're going through with this pandemic and the mobilizations against racist policies and that grave injustice that is exemplified by Breonna Taylor, by the murder of George Floyd, is that inequity is there, and that we have to make a serious change. So in a district where the COVID pandemic has made us an epicenter in the Bronx, in this congressional district, it has magnified, right, that grave injustice and the disparities that are a result of that. When you have an incredible number of people hospitalized and having suffered death, the health disparities that exist, the income inequality that exists, the substandard housing that exists where people are doubled up, tripled up, where we have an environmental racism that has led to some of these health disparities. Those are all the things that I talk about in my platform, right? That we have to have a congressional representative that is going to be unapologetic, unwavering against the establishment, who has a track record of that kind of fight, to demand what? That we have a minimum wage of no less than $15 an hour, that we have a deeper investment in affordable housing by having a homes guarantee, by cleaning up the environment in a district where we have the greatest number of asthma hospitalizations in the city, is in this district, right? So cleaning up the environment is critical, and we have way too many waste transfer stations in this district. So a Green New Deal is critically important. Making sure that we're investing in a quality higher education so that our children are not saddled with tens of thousands of dollars of student debt. You know, all these things are if we have not utilized this moment and don't see that this moment has called for this, then we never will take advantage of that opportunity. So for me, it's important that we elect not only a Democrat, but a good Democrat, and a Democrat that really embraces these values. And I do believe, as has been indicated by the mayor, in representative government, right? We are, as women, severely underrepresented at all levels of government. In this city of New York, which is such a progressive city, we don't have any women in citywide office, and we've lost female leadership in the city council. So, and we obviously at the state level are in the same situation, and we don't have enough women in Congress, and particularly women of color. So, para mí es importante, es sumamente importante, una prioridad, and it's a sense of urgency. And there's a lot of pain happening right now with what has motivated people to go to the streets, right? There's a lot of pain in that, the systemic inequities, racism that is deeply embedded in law enforcement and deeply embedded.
But there's a lot of passion.
There is, no, and I was going to say, but there's also a lot of hope with that, right? And the seeing, as Obama was saying yesterday in his speech, that level, right, of solidarity, but it's a truly beautiful moment that is so wide and varied of experience, and that passion is gonna elicit change, and we're going to see that change happen. So that's important. And just, you know, to what the mayor is saying, you know, she's also has her own election. You know, she's running, and I think one of the things that has united us and brought us into a sisterhood is because we're very similar in some ways. You know, we believe in very much the same things. We've not been afraid to stand up to power. We're very strong-willed women that are not gonna, you know, kowtow and coward, you know, in the corner when somebody speaks harshly towards us. And because we're driven by that passion, right, to make change, and that we believe in our hearts and in our souls that the equality belongs to all of us, right? That is why I've been such a coalition builder and reached across communities and believe very firmly in having inclusive leadership in the way that I lead. So this is a moment like no other. We need strong leadership for the 15th Congressional District. I am working really hard in a grassroots way to make this victory, to achieve victory in this election against, right, someone who claims to be a Democrat, but is really a Republican, and who is anti-choice and anti-LGBTQ equality, and who has made it very clear that that is what he wants to take to Congress, that that's his agenda, and that who has been a Trump apologist, who has paraded Republican senators in the Bronx. And just this little story. And then I want to encourage people that are watching, there is a link, please, if you want questions to be read to the mayor that we can, or to me. But let me just tell this one little story. So I'm making phone calls, and I was talking to this elder woman. I love my viejitos, right? So she's talking to me, and she goes, "Oh, I called the wrong number." And she's like, "Espérate, your voice sounds familiar." She goes, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm Melissa Mark-Viverito." "Ah, sí, yo te conozco." And she goes, "Mira, una pregunta. ¿Tú estás corriendo para esa posición que está corriendo el reverendo?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she's like, "Pues mira, te voy a decir algo, que yo para él no voto, porque yo lo vi en televisión el otro día y él estaba hablando de que deberíamos apoyar a Trump, y yo nunca voy a hacer eso, And she says, and I used to be a supporter of his. And now I will not vote for him and I don't want to see him elected, right? So this open, people are not, I think to some extent, this individual is trying to pull the wool over the eyes of constituents, but they see him for who he is. And I think that that is what we need to expose, but talk about our vision, right? Our unifying vision for the district, and that what we bring is an engaging, inclusive style of leadership that is going to be welcome to everybody. So again, if people have questions, there's a link, I believe, on the page that you're watching this video from. Please, if you have any questions, make sure to click on it. But
I wanted to know what Angelo's t-shirt says.
I don't think Angelo can be seen, but he has a t-shirt. What is it? You want to?
Blue letters. We have
a long way to go, but we have to go there together. Yes.
Yes.
And it's funny because Angelo had a question that he had sent me. If you want to just ask your question, Angelo, I think it's very timely and relevant.
Sure. Hello. I didn't realize that the video was streaming for everybody. Hello. My question is for both of our guests, and thank you so much for speaking on such an important issue. I think, given the current landscape and what's going on in the country, I would like to know what you both think people in elected office can do to have a public discourse and just really talk about colorism within our own communities, and what we need to do to face those uncomfortable questions that are perpetuated in the media, in our families, when the doors are closed and we might not necessarily be the most prepared to confront ourselves and the folks who are in a position to make the uncomfortable calls when it matters.
I just put a video, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, in English and another one in Spanish, to talk about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And the video in Spanish is a little different, and it goes to what Angelo was saying. Because in Puerto Rico, we have to confront our own fight with discrimination. It's people in Puerto Rico would say they're white, even though when you fill out the census, there's an entirely different category for us. It says white and it describes who is white, and then it goes down from there, and somewhere it says Puerto Rican, and that's what I found, what I punched in the computer. There is in our language very rooted systemic racism. We say things like, él es negrito, because in Spanish, negrito is a term of endearment, right? Él es negrito, pero es bueno. He's colored, but he's nice, meaning that is an exception to the rule.
Exactly.
And then we also have, going to what Angelo is saying, the governor of Puerto Rico just signed a civil code that takes away rights for, ¿cómo se dice? Uniones de hecho. Civil
unions.
So the rights of a couple that has been together for 30 years, but have decided that marriage is not for them, or for whatever reason they cannot be married, are now defined very narrowly. So one of the things, Angela, I think we have to do is truly and openly confront what we have in front of us. It is uncomfortable. Nobody likes to say when things are going wrong. In Puerto Rico, until 1984, a woman could not take her husband to court if he had raped her. Till 1984, she was deemed his possession his sexual possession, and he was supposed to be able to do with her and her body whatever he wanted. Well, we had to confront that and understand that times had changed, that it should have never happened, but that certainly the time was now to change it. But we also had to be able to pay a price. We have to be able to pay a price to say, we want Medicare for all. And all of a sudden now, it is quite important for everybody to be able to access appropriate healthcare. We have to be able to say, no, I don't want corporations to get subsidized in billions of dollars
Exactly. Yeah.
to develop a vaccine and then turn around and make a profit out of that vaccine that will make sure that people, certainly poor people, people of color, immigrants, Muslims, that cannot afford to buy. Because if we have understood something with the pandemic, is that what happens to me happens to you. If I don't take care of myself, I'm putting you at risk. If you don't take care of yourself, you're putting me at risk. And the other thing is that I think, Angelo, is we have to face a very, very fundamental question. What is government for and who is government for? So if you decide that government is to do as much good, I think Hillary Clinton said it is do as much good as I can to as many people as I can. If that is government, if government it is to create a platform where we all reach the starting line with the same amount of skills, if government is there to erase inequities, if government is there to make sure that Christie's kid gets the same opportunity as a kid in Puerto Rico, then we have to take on those that believe the opposite.
Yep.
And we have to take on the big pharma, and we have to take on the Walmarts that make $100 million an hour, and still pay minimum wage with no benefits to their employees. So we really have to make a fundamental, we have to question ourselves in a fundamental way and decide what the answer is.
Exactly. And I think that right there is what, that's what I've been talking about on the campaign as well, is that systemic change, to think that Jeff Bezos, right, has actually gotten wealthier during a pandemic and is not paying corporate taxes, and is paying workers not good wages, and has the audacity to then encourage people to donate to a GoFundMe account to help his workers, which he is paying shit wages to. It's just ludicrous, right? So the idea that we have to demand that government do better. And I was listening to an interview with a congressional member of the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus, who, was talking very, strongly about, we can't do policies in a race neutral way, right? We can measure, there's ways of measuring the inequity that exists in communities. There's a way of measuring that, and that resources need to follow, right? The expectations of policy needs to be centered in the understanding that this discrimination is real and that not every community can be treated the same way. And acknowledging, right, those injustices, those inequities, and trying to actively as government work to rectify it. And when we do that, then we're uplifting communities in the 15th Congressional District and beyond. But the conversation of race has always been a difficult one for people, right? Obviously in Puerto Rico as well, that Yulín was saying, that the mayor was saying about some of the terms that people use. And there's a painting that my mother had given me that she had collected from a local Puerto Rican artist, and the title of it is "Y tu abuela dónde está?" Right? That idea of that there is a legacy of African slavery and of African roots in our history. And obviously it's exemplified in who we are as a people. And that there's a sense of shame in that, and that you have to hide that, right? And that it's not to be talked about, or mejorando la raza, or whatever other terminology, right? So we have to take that stuff head on and really and talk about it, right? Yeah.
And one thing, Angelo, is they've always made us believe that in order for me to have something, somebody else has to have less.
Exactly.
So they always pin one of us against each other. So if the Latino population says, oh, we need better schools, then within the Latino population, it's, well, I'm Mexican, and I'm Puerto Rican, and I'm Cuban, and I'm Dominican, and I'm Colombian, and I'm from Honduras, and I'm, come on. When everyone that's on this call, everyone, for one reason or another, when it comes to discrimination, they lump us all together. And then we also have to look at and ensure that we elect people to go to office that really are a reflection not of who we are, but of who we want to be. And we also have to understand what justice is. Justice is not giving everyone the same. Justice is giving everyone what they need. So if I am a deaf person, I need something different than if I'm not a deaf person. If I'm a kid in the Bronx, I may have to pay for my lunch, which is something that is, to me, appalling, that children have to go to school and pay for their lunch. But then do we talk about, or do we really want universal healthcare? And when it comes down to it, is you really want your health or your neighbor's health to depend on how much money they have on the bank. And it's funny because perhaps if it doesn't happen to me, I'm like, oh, I don't have anything to do with me. But then when it happens to me, or when it happens to somebody that I know, then it becomes reality. And I think we need to also educate people to live in a society where my well-being, or at least a part of it, is attached to your well-being.
Yeah.
Very true.
So I think, Myra, I know that we may run a little over time, which is not a problem, but I know there's several questions, I understand, right?
Yeah, there's some questions that are coming to us from the Facebook video. One question, this one's for you, Melissa, from Rafaela. Can you explain how your experience as New York City Council member enhances issues on your platform for Congress that no other candidates running have?
That's a good question, and it's my track record locally is one of accomplishment, right? And that my life's work in office, which is 12 years as a council member, 4 years as speaker, is to utilize the platforms that I've had available to create more equity and justice in New York City, right? So, and then building coalitions to effectively make the case and to be able to make those issues successful, right? So prime example is stop and frisk, right? I was a real, very vocal force and voice in the city council against Bloomberg and against Commissioner Kelly at the time. And obviously, it wasn't just me, the advocates and other council members, but I was a very strong voice in opposition to that incredible injustice to a whole generation of Black and brown young people and the communities that we came from, right? And that we come from. But building coalitions to effectively, Rikers Island, right? Where people laughed and said, oh, here she is, pie in the sky, she's never gonna get anything done. Going against the police unions, going against the corrections officers unions, going against the editorials and and building an effective coalition to then see how we get that from the start of an idea and a vision to completion and making it a reality, right? Where closing that institution that represents so much inhumanity and then decriminalizing certain offenses is really a healing process, and it'll create more justice in our community. So I have really that record of thinking big and then bringing it down to the grassroots of building coalitions that then have helped get those issues through the finish line. And there's a long track record, and that experience I think is really important for this position. When you are dealing with obviously a legislative body that is almost maybe 8-9 times the size of ours, but that you know how to work with colleagues, but not also lose track of your principles and not compromising on those issues that are so important to you and to the community that you represent. There's too many that are wishy-washy, or that they put their finger in the wind. Where's the wind blowing? Well, let me go in that direction. And that has never been who I am, right? I stick to my principles. You may not agree with me at the end of the day, but I will explain my thought process. And a lot of it is based and centered on being a humanist. I'm being someone who is inclusive and who believes in equality for everybody. And everything I do is really within that framework. And so, and I say, the last thing I'll say, because I know we want to get to other questions, is that being from Puerto Rico, and for me, this position is important to Puerto Rico too, because we have had Congressman Jose Serrano, who I may not agree with him 100% on his point of views, but you could never say that he didn't make Puerto Rico a priority, right? And the voice that represented moving an agenda that is of interest to the island is important, and it should be part of the platform of every candidate in this race. But that to me is also something that is really important in this conversation. And I was going to say something else, and I lost my train of thought on that. But
it's a great segue.
Yeah,
Erica has a question.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And Erica, if you don't mind, because there's a great segue to what Melissa just said for both alcaldesa and Melissa. And I want to uplift two things. One, that we mentioned at the beginning, and you just mentioned, Melissa, that you were the former speaker of the New York City Council. But what is really important for women, Latinas like me, is that not only were you the speaker, you were the first Latina, first woman of color to hold that position, and what that meant for future leaders in that pipeline that you have helped build in New York City, and your commitment to make sure that there's more representation and not just in elected position, but in within elected officials and positions of leadership that really can move the needle on
things. I know that, and that's critical, because we're not getting into these positions for ourselves, right? We got to open the door for others and help develop the leadership, right, that's coming behind us. So that is why I was the first Puerto Riqueña woman to represent the city council district that I was elected to represent. Knowing that we have term limits in New York, right? We know that we have an expiration date, so to speak. And I was very clear that I wanted to see a woman replace me and come in after me, right? So 3 years before my term ended, right, I reached out to a young woman who was working with me in my office, who I saw great leadership potential in. And I sat her down and I said, listen, I see leadership potential in you, and I think you should run for this position. She did not see it in herself. She didn't think that was something she wanted to do. She just did not see herself as a leader. And I said, no, we're going to work on this together. And I allowed her to be very visible in the community as a way of developing herself, so that by the time the election came, she was ready to run. And she thankfully, and good for the community, she won, right? So it's developing that. And then the 21 and 21 initiative, where we have so few women in the city council, and creating an entity that was going to nurture, right, young women and encouraging them to think about this as a career, because serving our community should never be shied away from, right? And it's not just something that the boys club, right, has access to. We need to demand that we have to be a part of that conversation too. So the 21 and 21 is to help get women elected in the city council here locally, to expand the number of women in office. And it's in a good place. We see a lot of young women stepping up to the plate. And that to me is incredibly important work that we need to do. We do not have in this progressive city any woman in a citywide position here in New York City. And we have 11 women, 12 women in the New York City Council out of 51 members. And we don't have enough women of color and women at that in Congress. So we need to demand that representation includes gender, obviously, and also people of color, right, of all different persuasions. So that's important as well. But
and I think one thing that Melissa is also pointing at is sometimes when we speak about racial discrimination, people say, oh, there they go again. But you know, there are repercussions around that. There are rings of situations that come added to that. Unemployment rate, health issues. African-American women die of childbirth 4 times more than white women. Access to education, access to health, losing your job. You know, who loses your job first? It should be no aha moment for anyone that African Americans and Latinos are and Asians are dying at a higher rate than other groups of people in their communities. Why? Because they most likely have the jobs that if you don't go to work, you don't get paid. And in the United States, there's not necessarily paid sick leave for everybody, or there's no family paid sick leave. And I know that Kirsten Gillibrand has been working very hard in the US Congress to pass legislation of paid sick leave. There is an unpaid sick leave, family sick leave, but not a paid sick leave. So there are a lot of repercussions of you know, how come for people of color, their interaction, a violent interaction with the police, it's one of the 5 leading causes of death. So those are numbers that you have to look at, but you also have to look at from an economic standpoint. And what racial discrimination and profiling does to your ability to participate in the economy, which in turn becomes economic injustice.
Yep.
And that is something that is very, very important.
Erica.
Hey, thank you so much for this conversation. I've really enjoyed these cafecitos. I just quickly wanted to say that one thing I want to say about Melissa first, as a journalist for 7 years at El Diario, observing the way Latino electeds move in New York and nationally, is that Melissa earns her check like 10 times over. I know very few people, Yulín is another, Mayor Yulín is another, that like have this amazing capacity to take on so many issues and to really like handle everything from like a constituent complaint to making investments in St. Mary's Park, in the Bronx, into Patterson houses, all of these places that have been allowed to fall to the wayside for so long. So I wanted to say that, and I really commend you both. But one thing I want to talk about is this congressional seat has implications for the Bronx, of course, especially after this COVID pandemic, and also for Puerto Rico. The congressional seat was created for Puerto Rican representation in Congress. And at this time, we should not be fighting to maintain this seat, or to give it, or to allow it to go to someone who is a homophobic, who's anti-choice, or to someone who's mediocre. Like we have to stop that as a Latino community. We have to put forward the best of our community and only accept the best. And Melissa, hands down, is the best choice for the seat. So the question I have to Mayor Yulín, understanding the implications of this seat, going far beyond also the Bronx, is there a conversation that's happening from that side of the water to the Puerto Rican and other leaders here who are being sheepish about this election, quite frankly, and stating that helping our community and people connect the dots about the power of this seat for the South Bronx to Puerto Rico?
The answer is yes, but in 19 days, we can do a lot more. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to participate in this conversation. I think 2 things. There are so many good things about Melissa that one tends to not want to talk about the things that are wrong about the other candidate. But you see, the truth is not wrong. So talking about somebody and their record and their expressions. Now, there is such a thing as Dino. Democrat in name only. People that may run under the Democratic ticket, but whose idea of ensuring that things move forward is moving them backwards by continuing to support Donald Trump. There is no way that you can be a Latino or a sane person for that matter and understand about social justice and say that we need to support Donald Trump. Donald Trump is that disruptor in chief. And if you support him or want people to support him, then you are a disruptor also. If you are against the rights of the LGBTQ community, then you're telling your brothers and sisters, not only from the Latino community or the people of color or everybody, that if you are a member of the LGBTQI community, that you are less. And I love these words, that all men, and at that point they meant men, property owners, but we have evolved from that, were created equal and that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't matter where in the world you're from. What does that mean? That if you think less of me because I'm a woman, because I'm a poor person, because I'm a person of color, because I'm a white working man or woman, but you think I'm less than you. Does that mean that you think that I'm not endowed by my creator? Or is it that you have a creator that's different than mine? And I don't care if we call him Allah or Yahweh or Jesus or God or whomever. The principle of religion is the same as love. It's love. It's respect. It's ensuring that we care for one another. So people like Melissa's opponent, what they are saying is, no, we're not all created equal. I am better than you. And are able to say these things while then trying to say that I have your best interest in mind. And know that there is no time for ambiguity.
Right.
One thing that is something that people like about Melissa and about me, but they also dislike about Melissa and about me, is that we know where we stand. We are whizzy-whack politicians. What you see is what you get. That has an advantage. You know where the person stands. You know that the person doesn't change their conviction because of the position that they sustain. You know that what you're voting for ensures that your voice is heard, but also that you are part of the platform. You know that Melissa is not going to go to Congress and all of a sudden forget about you because her track record has shown it. And that goes a long way in an election where people will say anything to get elected and do barely anything to get you a better life. Yep. So yes, you have to ask yourself, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Do I want somebody to fight for me, or do I want somebody to fight for the establishment? Do I want somebody that can help unite the United States, the Bronx, and New York? Or do I want somebody that will divide? Do I want somebody that will help defeat Donald Trump? Or do I want somebody that wants to play along with him? Do I want somebody that can transcend the Latino community in New York? Or do I want somebody that really will just be quiet? Right. And do I want somebody as a Puerto Rican, as a Latino, that will help raise people's voices. And Melissa has proven that all throughout her life. The only thing I have against her is that she married me and I got divorced. So, but that I won't count. It's not her fault.
Yeah, I have the power to marry people. I had to register, but I have the power to marry people. So I did that a couple of times. Yeah, so I think, Myra, I think I'm going to pass it on to you because I think we're going to start wrapping up, right?
Yeah, so there were a couple questions, and I think we'll just try to merge them. Sandra, Norberto, and Jessica all had a similar type of question for both Melissa and the mayor. Alcaldesa Yulín, cuando Melissa esté en el Congreso, dado la crisis fiscal de Puerto Rico, ¿qué prioridad legislativa podría Melissa promover? And the other two questions are directed to you, Melissa, with around the same gist. When you get to Congress, what is the legislation that you want to prioritize regarding Puerto Rico?
So let me just say this, because I know I don't want to, we get lost in the conversation. If those of you that are watching, two things, I do have to do a self-promotion here. We definitely, I know you're watching this within an Act Blue page. If we are looking for any sort of contributions, we are in the last 19 days of this. This is a very grassroots campaign, direct contact with voters. Roberto has been great about doing a Latino Spanish speaking phone bank. Actually not Latino, a Spanish speaking phone bank. And it's been really great. And so we would ask that you volunteer. So if you sign up and please let us know if you want to give some of your time in these last 19 days. It would mean a lot to me personally. And I know a lot of opponents in this race are like relying on technology or texting or just mailers to people in their homes. I actually spoke to someone today as I was making calls who said, those millennials, all they think is that I'm going to respond with a text. And I appreciate actually the personal touch, right? The conversation and the personal talk, asking for my support, right? So that's what we need to be doing in this district, and we're going to continue to do that. Look, regarding Puerto Rico, it's very dear to me, obviously. I'm born and raised. Mi mamá sigue viviendo ahí, and it's always in everything that I've done, and my platform has been to amplify the voice of the island and to be an ally in pushing forward an agenda for the island as well. So for me, I've never supported the Fiscal Control Board. I think we need to eliminate it. One of the things that I do see, I've been an activist and came to New York City at the age of 18 and been heavily involved in organizing around Puerto Rico and issues regarding Puerto Rico, like the U.S. Navy out of Vieques, the political prisoners, etc. But I have never seen the moment that we have like right now to really be able to engage in a serious conversation around the decolonization of Puerto Rico. And that we cannot lose that window of opportunity the same way we can't lose the window of opportunity about talking about creating more justice and restructuring, right, what our society and our country looks like. So for me, I need to be there, right, to be able to be a voice and an ally and to be part of that conversation. So for me, that's really important. But the issue of the Fiscal Control Board, which obviously is a mechanism and a validation that we are a colony, is something that needs to be eliminated. And that's gonna be a tough conversation, but there have to be those of us that are willing to take on that position and to say that, nothing else is acceptable other than dismantling this undemocratic entity. And so that is imposing austerity measures on Puerto Rico and the elimination of the debt. And so those are issues that to me are important around the island. And Yulín, I'll leave it to you.
I was going to say the elimination of the Fiscal Control Board.
Yes.
It's anti-democratic. It came here as an entity to pay vulture funds at the expense of the people of Puerto Rico. And there are other ways to handle a fiscal crisis, which has proven that austerity measures just deepens the crises rather than getting us out of here. So that would be one thing. The other thing would be to ensure that Puerto Rico becomes part of the solution when it comes to the issue of developing medical devices and medications,
Pharmaceuticals,
but in a way that it is right for Puerto Ricans. At one point, we made 13 out of the 21 most used medications all over the world, and we couldn't buy them. They would be put on a boat, sent to the States, brought back, and something that cost 30 cents would cost $5. So that is something that needs to happen. But I think there's one important thing, is that we are really a nation divided by an ocean. There are 5 million Puerto Ricans in the States. There's 3.2 million Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. And we really have to understand that your fight is our fight and our fight is your fight. And we also have to understand that our political connection to Puerto Rico, to the United States, and Melissa and I agree that we're not where we should be, and that there should be a right of self-determination where the Puerto Ricans decide what we want our relationship to be with the United States. But we also have to insert ourselves into the civil rights and the fights of the people of the United States. Because when it comes about big pharma and making sure that we have access to healthcare, we have the same problem. When it comes to a justice system, a judicial system that is really skewed towards those that have more, we have the same problem. When we're talking about ensuring that people walk the streets, and rather than saying, I was saying the other day in the video, we're tired of hearing, may they rest in peace. We want them to live in peace. We have the same issue. When we talk about access to healthcare, I don't know how many, like 20, 25 million people lost their healthcare because their healthcare was attached to their job. That is what happened. And those fights are fights for a better and fair society, no matter where in the world you are. But I have to say that there is such a thing about ensuring that we put somebody in Congress that does not go there for any other purpose, but to be the voice of those whose voice have not been heard. Everyone has a voice, but sometimes people choose not to hear those voices. So take precautions, use your mask, wear your gloves, have social distancing, but make sure that you vote on whatever way that you can vote. Make sure that in 19 days you vote. Your voice must be heard. If you don't vote, somebody else is going to make the decision for you. I know Melissa. I've known her since 2012, so it's been 8 years. But I knew of her fights before I knew her. So her passion, her conviction, and her thirst for democracy preceded me knowing her. So do yourself a favor, go vote in 19 days and vote for Melissa Mark-Viverito. Melissa, do you have a number on the
ballot?
I'm number 4 on the ballot, if I'm not mistaken. Remember, there's like 13. And remember, this is considered the most democratic congressional district, I think, in the nation. So what matters for us here, those of you that are watching, is just the primary. This is not about waiting till November. This is about like whoever wins now in 19 days is the winner of this seat. And we do have.
She's not going to say it, but she's not taking any corporate money.
I'm not, no.
Vote and donate, chip in. I know times are hard, but if you can give $5, $10, $15, $20, $25, commit to that. It is an investment on yourself. It is an investment on your immediate future. So if we don't want people to be sellouts and they're not selling out, we have to put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
Yes, I said it.
And the website is www.acompaña, mmvforthebronx.com. So you can go in there and donate right now.
Yes, and so it is number 4 on the ballot. Number 4 on the ballot out of 13 candidates. And this is really, it's about who, as we all know, it's about who can pull the greatest number of voters to the polls. So let's make that happen. And so hopefully some of you will also join us for some of the phone banking. It's really enjoyable. I'll say that, because you're talking to people. It's nice to connect, to hear about them, to hear their concerns. And they really do appreciate the calls as a way of checking in during this difficult time as well. So gracias a todos que están escuchando. I really appreciate everybody's time that you gave us. Y Yulín, la alcaldesa, thank you. Hopefully we'll do one of these for your candidacy. She's been an incredible leader locally on the COVID response too in San Juan. So she had suspended her campaign to obviously deal with that emergency. And so the election, the primary for governor for the party is in September or August?
August 9th.
August 9th.
And then election is the same day as in the States.
Right. So we'll definitely work to help do something like this for you. So Sonia, thank you so much for being host, and Myra from Seeing. And
See Sonia drink her little wine.
I'm gonna go serve myself a glass now. Don't forget, everyone, the website. Go to the website, donate. Every dollar counts.
Hasta luego. Bye.
Bye.